Hello and welcome to Primordial Playground. This is Raman Turner, and the topic for today is becoming extraordinary. I've been studying various movement art forms my entire life, and I've always been fascinated by the idea of exploring human potential. A while ago, I started looking into what truly separated high performers from those who are less successful. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of people in the domain of fitness and wellness. My clients have ranged from ages 4 to 86 years old. Some have been recreational fitness enthusiasts, some have been athletes. Today, I'd like to share some ideas for helping you reach your full physical potential. When following a fitness training program, one of the key indicators of success will be measurement. So in other words, we need to find out where we are at and where we are going. This can include goal setting, benchmarks, and the overall progression you make from when you start to when you finish a particular phase of development. I wrote a book called The 365-Day Superhuman for this purpose. I've personally found that the practice of keeping a journal for my training has been worth its weight in gold. The journal has helped me significantly when I looked back and saw what I was doing correctly and what I still needed to improve on. So I ended up writing this book a couple years ago because keeping a journal had been so successful for me, I had to pass on the idea. The name, 365 Days Superhuman, is based on the notion that the cellular makeup of our bodies is constantly replacing itself. In 1 year's time, most of our cells will have died and been replaced by new cells. What that means is our bodies are kind of like a standing wave in a river. So imagine going to a river and watching water flowing over rocks. Even though gallons upon gallons of water keep moving over that single point, the shape of the wave stays fairly the same. So this is a metaphor that we can use for the human body because we're constantly inhaling and exhaling air, taking in food, we're excreting, our cells are constantly changing. New ones are being created, others are dying. So we really are like a standing wave. It's only our senses that make us think that we are, say, walking, talking machines made of meat, so to speak. So the idea of measuring your fitness training is to think about it this way. Plan it out for a year, because there's no quick and easy success. Instead, we're going to be consistent and we're going to move step by step in the direction of where we want to be. Let's think of it this way. Our thoughts form our habits, which in turn form our behaviors. If we want to transform our bodies, we need to change our behaviors into something that's more in alignment with what we want to be. We'll talk more about the importance of thoughts and behaviors in a little while, but I highly recommend that you pick up a copy of my book. You can click on the link below to purchase it. Before we move forward, I wanted to define a couple terms. The first word is primordial, which means existing or persisting from the beginning. The idea behind the name of my company, Primordial Playground, is that I believe that movement is a fundamental aspect of life. And the desire to move is something so ancient that it only makes sense to call this impulse primordial. When we put the two words, Primordial Playground, together, it speaks to my goals of teaching people how to embrace a long exploration of free movement while having a lot of fun in the process. The next word I'd like to define is extraordinary, meaning very unusual, very different from what is normal or ordinary, extremely good, or impressive. Now, the word extraordinary ties directly to the topic of our discussion today. And really, what we're trying to dig into here is how do you eliminate some of the roadblocks that you may have in reaching your fullest physical potential. When we look around today, we realize that many people, especially in the U.S., are far from living their full potential. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching people how to maximize their life experience, because life is enhanced in a healthy body. If you don't have a healthy body, the quality of your life is lessened. And we don't have a lot of time in this world, so we need to milk our experience for what it's worth. In the first half of this presentation, we will look at my philosophy of movement. This will be the big picture of what it takes to achieve optimal health and wellness. Next, we'll look at how I integrate this philosophy into my classes and programs. Just remember, throughout all of this, there are no shortcuts to extraordinary fitness. We can still get there faster if we can avoid taking too many detours. By the end of our time together, I hope that you will walk away with some newfound inspiration and tools that you can begin incorporating into your own lifestyle as soon as possible. Sound good? All right, let's move on. Have you ever been hiking and seen how people stack up stones to serve as a landmark? These are called cairns, and they're used all over the world as a way to mark pathways. I'd like to use the idea of a cairn to metaphorically talk about the way we develop into extraordinary human beings. So let's build a cairn, shall we? Keep in mind that each tier of the cairn represents one aspect of physical development. From the bottom to the top, each stone shows the order of importance for 6 key factors. These factors are mind state, nutrition, mobility, strength, endurance, and finally, movements. Let's start at the bottom. The first of our stones represents mind state. Now, why would I say mind state is the biggest factor in physical development? The personal identities and beliefs that we hold are the foundation of all that we are. I like to think of thoughts as the precursors to physical experience. What we think about regularly influences our behaviors big time. There's been increased discussion in the arenas of biology, neuroscience, and social science about how powerful an effect our beliefs and attitudes have on our lives. So the first stone is about forging an empowered mental state, because this is when wonderful things happen. Forging a powerful mental state can include setting goals, challenging yourself regularly, leaning into struggles and adversity, and over time, building confidence and competence in whatever area you're pursuing. Just like anything else, though, there are no shortcuts to achieving a powerful mental state. The mind must be trained just like any other aspect of our personality. Okay, the next stone is nutrition. What we eat and drink is the physical substrate of our bodies. In the post-industrial world, most of what we call food is actually made of substances loaded with toxins and severely lacking in the nutrients required for optimal health. Further, the public notion of what good food is often skewed by propaganda offered to us by the media, food corporations, government programs, and various groups looking to profit on your ignorance. In the slide here, we see that I advocate for a balance of macronutrients, 40% carbohydrates, 30% proteins, 30% fats. Dietary carbohydrates should be complex and unrefined whenever possible. Vegetables, sweet potatoes, berries, fruits, things like that. I stay away from grains and particularly the gluten in wheat because of the inflammation I noticed it caused in myself and in some of my clients. Since unnecessary inflammation slows down our physical development, it's something that we need to avoid. Our protein should come from a variety of sources, including meat, eggs, fish, and shellfish. Finally, we need to have a good amount of healthy fats in our diet, which can include butter and other animal fats, avocados, nuts, seeds, and coconut oil. And this is really an untapped source of energy for people who have perhaps in the past tried to avoid eating fats, thinking that it was more healthy that way. But we need fat, and I suggest that you eat it. Stone 3 is mobility. Okay, this is the secret sauce of injury prevention, you guys. Mobility includes flexibility training, but it also is so much more. Mobility involves the actual strengthening of all the major joints of the body in order to counteract the wear and tear we can get from using our bodies a lot. In some cases, mobility exercises can even regenerate cartilage around joint surfaces because the gentle movement used by these exercises increases blood flow and decreases inflammation around damaged areas. So our joints don't just wear out, folks. Stiff, achy, and creaky joints are a result of misuse, including chronic cases of slight misalignment and too much intensity in our exercise. The pain and injury we feel in our joints are lagging indicators. They come after damage has occurred in the body, sometimes over a long period of time. However, we can build these joint surfaces back up by carefully programming weight-bearing exercises and techniques for strengthening the tendons around those joints. Just like anything else, the key for these exercises is moderation. So a moderate amount of impact is good for the joints. Too much overloads them and pushes them past their ability to recover. Abuse yourself in this way, and you'll start to get deterioration of the joints. One other note here is that many of our modern inventions, like cushioned shoes, chairs, cars, things like that, they are intended to make our lives easier, but we're only now discovering that they also deliver a heavy cost on our physical well-being. For example, ultra-supportive shoes, while designed to cushion and support arches and so forth, actually act as a brace, which over time weaken the joint structures of the feet because they're not allowed to take on the forces they normally would. Similarly, chairs can lead to shortened hip flexors and weak hamstrings. This in turn can lead to all sorts of complications with lower back and knee problems. The fourth tier of our cairn is strength. And strength plays a crucial role in boosting metabolism because increased muscle mass is going to allow our bodies to burn fat more effectively, thereby creating a more lean physique. Strength also helps with spinal stabilization and posture. But more than these things, strength makes all of our movements easier. One of the frequently overlooked factors leading to the failure and acquisition of difficult movement skills is that the athlete has insufficient strength for the skill they're trying to perform. So strength is a key component here. Whenever we find that things are difficult, we need to raise our strength base in addition to working skill progressions, which we will talk more about in a few moments. Our fifth stone is endurance. Once we have a solid strength base, our next objective is to build the work capacity in that strength base. This will allow us to have more force output over time, not get tired, and things like that. So what I advise is high-intensity circuit training. This often looks like chaining together different kinds of exercises and running them in circuits, or running them in sprints with intervals of work and rest. This will allow us to become more adapted to long-term output. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that the more endurance you train, the less explosive you become. So this is something we need to consider when choosing a training program that matches our goals. In some sports and movement arts, you need more endurance. Others require more power output or explosiveness.